The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. So I want to continue to talk about Samantabhadra's vows today. As I was looking through the vows and considering how to approach talking about them, it came to mind that there were a few themes that they can be grouped in, or that run through the vows. Yesterday we talked a little bit about cleansing karma, and that's one of the themes that run through all the vows. The way I'm thinking about it today is that we set off to do practice, and we take up the path, and that path it emerges both from our study and practice of the Dharma, but also from the following of our own heart. And by that I don't mean the following of the self, I mean the following of our deepest self, our shin, as they might say, our heart, the heart mind. And the cleansing of karma is all of the things that sort of pull us away from that path, the path of Buddhism, the path of following of our heart. And as we shed those things within us that want to pull us off the path, that is one way to look at the cleansing of karma. And so each of the vows that we take up are helping us to follow that path and to walk the way of following our own heart, our own deepest self. Another of the themes is and the one that I want to talk about today is what we could call making offerings. And then there is study of the way and devotion are two more themes that we'll talk about later in the retreat. So, making offerings. I read once that the first thing you learn as a child in a Buddhist family or world is first how to make gasho. And that putting our hands together in gasho when we come to the temple, when we meet a monk or another trainee, is a way of offering respect. It is an offering, a giving of respect to what we encounter in the world. And that making gasho, that mudra of gasho is bringing the two sides of ourselves together in oneness. It is Buddha nature in me recognizes and bows to Buddha nature in you. We can let this be an empty form and just make it because that's what we're supposed to do. Or we can inhabit that form with as much of our heart as we can muster. there is a virtue in making a habit of making gasho to beings and things. In that when we make gasho, even though we don't feel like Buddha nature in me is bowing to Buddha nature in you, we are actualizing that truth. Even though, again, we may not see it or feel like it. If we don't see it or feel like it, we can at least intend for it to be true. And thus we begin to harmonize ourselves with the path, with Buddhism, with practice. Again, I say, in my experience for myself, the thing which brings me to practice is my own heart, some mysterious thing within me, some spark within me that feels there is something more and wants to give expression to that something more. So the path, the practice, the way, the tradition, they may seem foreign to me at times. They may seem alien or difficult or not natural or whatever, but my heart has brought me here. My own self has brought me here. My own, I hope, deeper self has brought me here. So I'm going to do my best to inhabit the form to the best of my ability and allow it to change me. The Dharma, the practice of the Dharma will change us. We don't necessarily know how, and it's not necessarily a good idea to know how it will change us. Since if it changes us in conformity with our own views and ideas, then we will only be stuck with what we came with. If we don't allow the Dharma, the practice of the Dharma to change us, we will only have the suffering that we knew from before. We will only have our ideas and opinions about how things should be. So we allow the practice of the Dharma to change us. The next thing to learn right from the beginning of practice is to make offerings. Again, a child in a Buddhist country a child would go to the temple and bring an offering. You'd always bring an offering when you go to the temple. Doesn't matter how big it is, just bring an offering. A handful of rice, an orange. You just bring an offering. So giving, the paramita of giving, the perfection of giving, is put into action right away before we know anything else. And this is no accident. It is very important to cultivate that mind of generosity. And as Reverend Master Ju would put it, that spirit of generosity of spirit. The practice of giving, as within Samantabhadra's vows, he says, I vow to make unlimited offerings. I vow to make unlimited offerings. So he's kind of putting, kind of opening the thing wide up for us. We can just bring a little bit, no limitation on how small the offering might be. Honestly, no limitation on how large the offering might be. We we don't really have to worry about that. We can just, again, sit still and ask within ourselves, what offering can I make? Maybe it's the offering of my labor, maybe it's the offering of my practice, maybe it's money, maybe it's material goods, maybe it's just the willingness to keep my mouth shut and sit still on my abundant opinions. When we make offerings, we are opening our own heart. We are directly practicing, training our greed. We are giving something of ourselves. Dogen says, we make offerings though we ourselves get nothing whatsoever in return. This is the spirit in which we make offerings. We make them without expecting some kind of return. Now, it is super important that we recognize that we are where we are, and maybe we do expect some return. Do we then say, well, I expect a return, so I'm not going to make an offering? No, I wouldn't encourage that. Just do the best you can. Make the offering that you can. Again, this opens our heart. It begins to loosen the grip that we have on what we think of me and mine. We make offerings and slowly we loosen the grip. And if we're willing to make unlimited offerings, then who knows where it might lead. We open our heart, and in doing this, we enter one of the aspects of the fundamental reality of existence. There is this thing, which is something we might call the giving and receiving, the basic giving and receiving of existence. We breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants breathe in carbon dioxide, they breathe out oxygen. It's all good physical chemistry and organic chemistry and, the functioning of the material world. But it's also weirdly mysterious. How could such a thing come to pass? Maybe we think we don't have enough. Maybe we really don't have enough. This is a possibility in our world. But still, that world of giving and receiving exists as a fundamental aspect of life. And by making offerings and opening our heart, we begin to enter that world. And we begin to see that by letting go of our impulse to control the giving and receiving, we enter more deeply into that world of giving and receiving. This does ask us to have faith. When we let go of the solid, concrete thing that we have into not having it anymore, we are acting on faith. Maybe I won't get enough. Maybe I won't have enough. I was reminded of one of my good monastic friends, a teaching of one of my good monastic friends the other day. this moment is sufficient. Another of the vows of Samantabhadra that take up this matter of offerings is, I vow to rejoice in others' merit and virtue. We are kind of pretty obsessed with fairness and, fairness and fame and gain, honestly. You think of fame and gain as, wanting to be a movie star and in the worldly spotlight. And, fair enough, that's a certain kind of fame, but we need to take it in and look at our own heart. What is fame? What is the desire for fame? One thing I'm working on now is letting go of the constant, I'm going to make a confession, the constant need to have someone affirm my choices and my actions. That need, that desire for that little pat on the back. Yeah, it's okay. You're okay. This is an aspect of fame. And an aspect of gain. I'm going to have something. Oh, I'm confirmed. I'm stepping out into faith, but I have this, somebody said it was okay what I'm doing. We have to be willing to let go of this. This was so important to Dogen, this matter of letting go of fame and gain, that he had a chief disciple who did something, I don't know what, which was in pursuit of fame and gain, probably something external and pretty worldly. He drove the person out of his monastery and cut his meditation seat off from the rest of the meditation seats in the meditation hall with an axe. We must not do things for the sake of fame and gain. And we let go of this in small ways and in large ways, and this vow to rejoice in others' merit and virtue is a concrete good practice for this. We put others' virtue and merit ahead of ours. We let go of that envious heart. Dogen had another nice phrase. He said, do not long for the frost on top of someone else's gate. Do not long for that thing, that lovely thing that another person has. Bring ourselves back to this moment. What I have in this moment, miserable though it might be, is sufficient. I rejoice in the merit, in others' merit and virtue. This is also letting go of our self-concern. Will I get enough? Will I be loved? All of these things. And then finally, I vow to transfer all merit and virtue universally. One of the things that is traditionally taught about making offerings is that by making offerings, we're creating good karma for ourselves for the future. And this good karma is the good karma that will bring about transformations that will allow us to see more deeply into the truth. One way of looking at practice is that we do a bunch of practices to create good karma so that we can eventually become enlightened. I don't really encourage you to look at practice in that way. Creates a bunch of trouble. So I would just encourage us to just make offerings because that's a good thing to do. But what we can think about, there can be a kind of hesitance. We think, I'm going to accumulate all this good karma and it's going to help me to become enlightened. And when we're offering merit, we're effectively saying, yeah, I'm going to give away all that merit. I'm going to give away whatever merit I have for the benefit of all beings, universally. Universally, so every 2 weeks in the monastery we have a ceremony to bless the president and the nation, no matter who is president. I read somewhere once, I can't remember where, that there is no self that enters into enlightenment. And so, in a sense, there is no self that accumulates merit. This is what we learn when we recite the scripture of great wisdom. There is no self that accumulates merit. We just keep giving it away, and again, we enter more deeply into that world of giving and receiving. Give it away. This moment is sufficient. Homage to all the Buddhas in all worlds. Homage to all the Bodhisattvas in all worlds. Homage to the scripture of great wisdom.